time for the Daily Planet podcast show. So sit back, relax, and give us a go. Scott and Matt and maybe a guest, undertaking an epic pod quest. We're gonna ramble on about movies and books and television and directors and film festivals and this really long list of stuff that I know nothing about, but they gave it to me and they really wanted me to read through it. And that's all I can really say about it, but it's gonna be great. Okay, start the show.
Hello, and welcome to the Daily Planet Podcast, your weekly podcast for all things movies, TV, books, and anything else we feel like talking about. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host, and I am joined this week by my co-host and large, scary robot person, Michael. How's it going, Michael?
Danger, Scott Daly.
That's what I was hoping you would do. This week was supposed to be an off week for the podcast, but Michael, you and I have been talking over Messenger for a while now, and we've really meaning to catch up on some TV stuff that we've been watching and talk about it and just catch everyone up on the TV stuff we've been watching. So we thought it'd be a good idea to do like an unscheduled bonus episode, I guess. We're just still going to put it in the numbers as a normal episode, but that's what we're going to do.
Yes, I have been texting you about a lot of TV shows I've been watching, and you've mostly been not believing me. So this will be a good discussion.
Yeah. So I think we're mainly going to be discussing the new Netflix series and reboot of the 1960s TV show and 1990s movie Lost in Space. There are going to be spoilers for at least the first 4 episodes of Lost in Space. So if you're really concerned about that, don't listen, I guess. And then we're going to move into some what we've been watching and catch up me on and have Michael try to convince me to watch these things that I don't believe are as good as he says they are. I think that's what we're going to do.
All right.
But first, Michael, we got some news.
This is Daily Planet News. I don't like that.
What's happened in the world this last week, I guess?
So, how do you feel about the Thundercats, Michael?
I remember the Thundercats as a show that used to come on like maybe right before the Ninja Turtles. Mm-hmm. And I usually saw like part of it.
Yeah. It was a 1980s television show that was basically one of those, in the classic 1980s sense, it was a TV show created entirely to sell toys. That's what it did. Just like Transformers, and I guess you could argue Ninja Turtles. But it was kind of anime-y a little bit.
Yeah, well, it was kind of that like unique 80s style
right.
of kind of superhero-y, muscly He-Man
right.
type shows that there were a bunch of, but most of them were forgotten and lost to time.
Yes. So the reason we're talking about Thundercats is because it was announced this week that Cartoon Network is bringing the series back for a new show called Thundercats Roar. And, well, the art style, Michael, is very different.
Yeah, when I opened up your show notes, then you asked me why I was laughing so hard. And it's because you put this side screen, like the split panel view of 1985 Thundercats with its like He-Man-y, like serious kind of animation.
Right.
And then this like retarded person animation of the 2018 version, which looks like an Ed, Edd and Eddy kind of, I don't know, something like that.
It looks like what I've been described. I don't watch Steven Universe, but I've been told it looks very similar to kind of the Steven Universe. It's very the cutesy, childish. I've heard similar to some versions of Teen Titans, not the one that you and I watched when we were younger, but a different style of Teen Titans animation. Yeah, they're going for something a lot more sillier, a lot more comedic, and people are apparently very upset about this. I didn't know there was like a big contingent of Thundercats fans, but apparently there's a Thundercat fandom and they're mad.
Well, yeah, but it's kind of weird. Like if you're remaking something like this, you're doing it for the older fans who are nostalgic for the original thing. Like no one who this is in like the age group this seems to be aimed for, which is like, I don't know, 10-year-olds or something, knows anything about the Thundercats. So you should either like do your own thing, or if this is just for the original fans, then it does seem a bit weird to use this perverse animation style.
Yeah. I will say that in 2011 they rebooted the Thundercats as well, and they made it like they leaned into the anime type art design, and it really just looked like an anime. And that only lasted one season. It got canceled after that season. So
yeah, well, there can't be a lot of Thundercats fans. I mean, this is a weird choice for a reboot.
Yeah. I don't. I mean, that's like my confusion here is both why are people so upset about this, but on the other side, why are they doing this? What is like you said, what is the audience they're trying to get? Why do they think people are going to watch this thing? What are they doing? So they've managed to piss off the people that might have actually watched the show that they already determined was not enough people to sustain a television show. And are they hoping that like Steven Universe people are going to be like, oh, I don't know what this is, let me watch it?
Yeah, well, we'll see. Who knows?
I guess so.
Cartoon Network seems to know what they're doing more so than like Nickelodeon, which has kind of faded into obscurity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That is true. I mean, last week we talked about Rick and Morty getting 7 seasons of and eternal episodes, but other than that, what do they do?
Who?
Cartoon Network.
Well, I'm not really up on my current Cartoon Network shows, but I know like Steven Universe and whatever.
Yeah.
They had Adventure Time, which is very popular.
That's
and I believe Nickelodeon actually passed on Adventure Time before Cartoon Network took it. And it was like a massive cult hit with all age groups.
Yeah. I think the problem here, Michael, is perhaps you and I have just aged out of Cartoon Network's target audience. That's makes me very sad, but maybe it's happened.
It does a bit. Yeah. I've seen some Adventure Time shows, and it's actually pretty. It's pretty spastic, but it's pretty intelligent as well in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's been something I've been meaning to try out. I've just never gotten around to it.
Yeah, but no, I haven't. I don't watch as many cartoons as we both used to. Late, like probably up to like mid college, we both regularly watched Cartoon Network. But
it's true. It's very true. All right. So the next piece of news, we have an update on Amazon's $1 billion Lord of the Rings series. We had reported on this a couple times before.
$1 billion Lord of the Rings series?
Oh yeah, I guess you weren't on the episode where you reported on this. Yeah, their contract they bought the rights to Lord of the Rings for $250 million, and as part of the rights, they had to do it's a 5-season minimum. So they're estimating that between the rights purchase and the production of the 5 seasons of TV, it's going to cost $1 billion.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane. Are they really going to get that many more Amazon Prime subscribers?
I mean, what they're doing obviously is trying to chase down their own Game of Thrones, right? They want a super popular fantasy epic series. That's what their goal is. So they're hoping that it could be this. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm not that excited about. I mean, the story about young Aragorn feels a lot to me like the Han Solo movie. Yeah.
So that's that was the news this week that the series seems like it's going to center around young Aragorn, which is something I called way back when we first reported on this. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's going to be so boring and uninteresting." And I think in general, prequels are less interesting, but Aragorn did a whole bunch of stuff before the events of Lord of the Rings. Like Tolkien didn't go into it in a huge amount of detail, but he basically wrote out what his life was from birth to the events of the Lord of the Rings. So it's not like there's not stuff to do there. So I mean, I don't think this is going to be like, I don't think it's going to be better than the Lord of the Rings movies or anything, but it could be interesting.
Maybe, yeah. It just seems like none of it's necessary, like none of it is going to really provide context that helps you understand. Like his character wasn't really that complex, I would argue, in The Lord of the Rings.
Well, in the movie, for sure. I think he was pretty complex in the books, but...
yeah. I mean, there was a lot of detail in the books, but I wouldn't say he was a complex character with a lot of, like, pathos and, I don't know, he was just kind of a hero, but I'm not that interested in this. This seems like a massive waste of money, but it could also be the kind of thing that everyone else goes crazy for, but I just hate.
Well, I mean, I think there's my point with pointing out that there's a lot of stuff written by Tolkien here is there's things you can do with it. And yes, right now it might not seem like it's a necessary thing. It might not seem like there's anything to explore here. I think there's a way to get creative with it, and someone could take the story and write something interesting and explore the world in a new and interesting way while focusing on maybe some characters we haven't heard. All we know is that Aragorn did these things. We don't know a lot about the people he was surrounded by when he did them.
Well, I hope it's more of that. I hope it's someone who has been like imagining things in the Lord of the Rings world for a long time and has this original story they want to tell, and they just happen to use an earlier version of Aragorn as a person to tell it from. I feel like the same thing should be like, there's so many great Star Wars stories that have nothing to do with like Han Solo and Luke Skywalker, but for some reason Disney isn't brave enough to explore them.
I mean, I think Disney will get there. I think they are very much playing the conservative game right now, and Disney has a bunch of plans for Star Wars that new series that have nothing to do with any of the characters they've introduced so far. That's what Rian Johnson's whole trilogy is. But for now, they are certainly going the conservative route, and this would seem to be a very conservative move as well. But as also, when you look at it, I mean, the rights that were given or that were purchased by Amazon were very specific to Lord of the Rings. So it's anything that's in the book, the three novels and the events around that. So they don't have any rights to the Silmarillion. They don't have any Hobbit type rights. It's very specific to Lord of the Rings and the stuff contained within the appendices and stuff there. So they're kind of limited to what they can do.
That does seem potentially very limiting.
Yeah. So, all right, that is Lord of the Rings Young Aragorn. We will keep bringing it up again when we learn new information, but I think we're still probably a few years out on that one. But $1 billion, I still can't get $1 billion.
Yeah, it's insane.
I guess Bezos has plenty of money, so
he does. Yeah. Well, Amazon's winning everything else. They might as well take some gambles to try to win the streaming market.
That's true. All right, well, let's move into it, Michael, and let's talk about Lost in Space.
We're lost. No kidding. This is Will Robinson of the 24th Colonist Group. I'm the first human to discover evidence of an alien intelligence.
So again, spoilers for at least the first few episodes of Lost in Space, because I think that's all you've seen. And
yeah, I looked it up. I've actually seen up to 6, I think.
Okay. So spoilers up to episode 6, possibly, of this 10-episode run. So before we, have you ever seen any of the 60s show, or did you watch the 90s movie?
No, I saw the 90s movie, and when you first told me this was going to be rebooted as a Netflix series, I thought it was a stupid idea. The 90s movie was bad. It seems like the 60s version was pretty campy.
It's very 60s.
Yeah, so I didn't really feel like there was a lot to be done with it. But yeah, after I saw the first episode of the new one, I think I texted you like during the first episode, and I was like, dude, Lost in Space is actually really good. I really liked what they had originally done with it. But what was your, before we get into the first episode, what was your Lost in Space history?
Yeah, I think I've probably seen a handful of episodes from the 60s show, but I never really just because I was curious. I've never really got into it. The DVD for Lost in Space, the 98 version, was one of the first DVDs we owned, because it was when the DVD player came out to try to encourage people to buy it, they were like, buy a DVD player and get 5 free DVDs of things that no one's buying, so we're trying to get rid of. And this was one of the ones we got. So I actually watched it quite a few times, because it was one of 4 or 5 discs that we had. Did not like it. I mean, there were parts of it I enjoyed. There were fun parts of it. I remember thinking the armor that Matt LeBlanc's character puts on to fight the spider monsters was cool looking armor, but I thought the story itself wasn't very good. The characters, especially the parents, were very flat and uninteresting.
Yeah.
And I didn't think it was a very good movie at all.
Yeah, my impression of all of the Lost in Space kind of history is that it's basically like Gilligan's Island in space. It's like,
I think
it's not meant to be taken very seriously.
Right.
It doesn't really explore very many deep concepts.
I think it's literally Swiss Family Robinson in space. Like they're called
I think
the Robinsons.
that's the inspiration, but
Yeah.
in terms of like television structure, it's kind of like the Smith character seems to be like just like a humorous, like not really serious villain. Kind of bumbling and
anyway. The movie had like a time portal thing and all that weirdness. It was very weird.
Yeah. But with the first episode of the new show, I thought they had adapted a new tone. So
so that's what I'm really interested from you is, what did the first episode do that you liked so much, and how did it ruin it after that?
Right. Well, so my criticism of remaking it initially was, it's supposed to be like a Swiss Family Robinson type thing. So like one of the core kind of conflicts or things to the premise is it's like a survival like story, right? It's this family that you're rooting for, and they are shipwrecked on a planet, and like they have to survive using all of their various like specific skills and so forth. And I felt like previously that had never been done well, because they have all of these like science fiction space things that kind of like make survival really easy. And if survival is going to be a central conflict, it needs to like feel like it has some weight to it. And I thought the first episode of the show really had that. So it starts off actually in a pretty cool way, where they're all seated around the table in what you later realize is an escape pod, but just like playing cards. And some of the children or their wife or whoever it was is like, is this really okay? Should we be doing this? And the father's like, yep, we're just playing cards here. And you can totally imagine it as like, a father trying to like keep his family calm, even though shit's about to get real. They crash land, the ship starts to sink, and they have some trouble getting out. And then a bunch of other stuff happens. The Mother Robinson, what's her name?
Jeez, it starts with an M. Maureen Robinson.
Maureen Robinson has like a leg injury. They need to get some kind of battery or something out of the ship, which is already sunk. And the only person who can fit through their hatch is Will. And he's afraid to do it. And they're setting up the characters really well in all of this. The mother is clearly like the smart, kind of like intelligent kind of matriarch leader. But the father's kind of like the tough soldier, like get things done kind of guy. And the son is like innocent and scared, but kind of like pure. And anyway, the daughter ends up diving in instead, much to everyone's like telling her, oh no, you're gonna get stuck. In fact, she does get stuck. And then the father has to bring the son to go get like the magnesium metal or whatever it is, to melt her out of it. He gets separated from his son, and then he has to make a choice, which I thought was really cool, where it's like, okay, well, I could spend the time to like go down this hole after my son, but he seems to be immediately okay, so I'll just trust him to stay alive and go back to my daughter, who's definitely going to die if I don't go back and save her. And so there's like all of this stuff piling up, which is great source of tension. You're learning about all of these characters. The father seems like a really interesting character who's just like trusting his son, and stuff seems to be going badly. You go back to the daughter who's trapped in the ice, and she's like, about to die, and she's like, tell Will it's not his fault, and doing a really good job acting, and it's very touching because she doesn't want Will to like think that it's his fault that she died. And then a moment happens that ruins the series forever, in my opinion, which is the robot shows up. And the robot, uses his heat magic to save the girl from the ice. And then which would be fine. That part is fine. It's like, oh, this robot comes and yeah, maybe the robot can get her out. And then like they're cold. And so they're like, robot, can you warm us? And the robot just warms them. And this is sort of like emblematic of the problem, which is that every little discomfort they have from now on, the robot can just fix. And the survival aspect of the show, which they've done a really good job setting up. And that's not the only way they could have done the series, but they did a great job setting that part up, is completely lost. You know, from then on, the robot like recovers their ship and fixes everything and protects them. And you're just not worried about anything anymore. The father's kind of like harsh survival tactics are completely made obsolete because you have the robot to just fix everything. I very rapidly lost interest after that point. What did you think of the first episode?
I thought the first episode was absolutely the highlight of the season. I agree with just about everything you said. I think it sets up our characters very well. It puts them in this extremely dire situation at the beginning that they have to find a way to get out of, and having Will and his robot be the ones that solve the problem, I think is a really great way of setting kind of Will's central back and forth conflict throughout the whole thing, which is him dealing with his fear and how he overcomes it personally with the assistance of his relationship with the robot, which is like the key relationship of this whole show, is the relationship between Will and the robot. Did the first episode even introduce Dr. Smith? I can't remember.
No, it didn't. She wasn't mentioned at all.
Okay, so we'll wait to talk about her in a bit. I thought that it was a pretty well shot pilot episode. Something that I think kind of goes down. I think the show has its pretty moments, but mostly I don't have much to say about the direction other than it was worked. Like like there's no real special style flourishes. It's very much shot, reverse shot, and then clear special effect medium shot type stuff, which is okay. Mm-hmm. I don't think it needs to do that, but yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you on how and why the first episode worked as well as it does. I do agree that especially like episode 2 through episode 4, the show lost its way a little bit, and was like trying to figure out like there's a lot of things that are going on in the show constantly, and it kind of loses the thread a little bit for a while. But I will say that in my opinion, in the back half, the back 5 episodes, it picks up that thread again pretty well.
Yeah, I just can't help but feel like everything had been ruined for me after episode 5 or 6 or wherever I stopped watching. The next complaint I had, the robot continues to be a source of annoyance in fixing things, but the next complaint I had was Smith. What did you feel? How did you feel about Smith?
I went back and forth. I like Parker Posey a lot, who plays Dr. Smith. I thought the introduction of making her like not the real Dr. Smith, like she basically sneaks onto the spaceship, and by tying up her sister, and then assumes the identity of Dr. Smith when all hell is breaking loose to aboard Jupiter spacecraft real quick. And so we see her as this like duplicitous, selfish, lying person. I think there are times when Parker Posey's performance really worked, and there are times when it got just almost too over the top villainous.
Right. A lot of the times it seemed like she was being villainous just to be villainous and not because it made any sort of sense.
Well, her main motivation throughout the story is if I get back up to the spaceship, everyone's going to know it's me, and I'm going to get arrested and my life is over. So everything she's doing is basically to prevent the Robinson from getting rescued. And then as the series shifts, and as we learn that the planet that they're on is on a collision course with the sun, basically a black hole knocked it off course a little bit, and its orbit will eventually just get so close to the sun that the planet will die. suddenly she knows I have to get off this planet. I have to help doing that, but I need leverage. And in the later half of the story, her motivation kind of crystallizes a little bit, and then I think she becomes a much more interesting character from then on out.
But the way we meet her is basically like before there's any really hope of like escaping the planet. She crash lands with the mechanic dude, who's a pretty boring character, but that's another discussion. And the mechanic dude kind of like, first of all, Smith's completely incompetent, right? They make it clear that she doesn't have the training that everyone else has because she just snuck on board. So she's, in every scenario, like unable to do all the first aid or like repairs or like whatever else.
Her skill is duplicity. That's what
right.
she's good at.
Right. And so she needs everyone else in order to survive. And so she, relies on this mechanic guy to help her. At some point she leaves him in the middle of a storm with the flare, which didn't really make sense. Like they're like, yeah, she's betraying him, but what exactly is her intention there? Like she doesn't know there's anyone else around. She's incompetent. He's the one that's been like keeping them alive so far. And then she gets rescued, like apparently not that far from him. And she just lies. Like, no, there's no one else here to save. It's like, why wouldn't you? Like she needs every other person. Like as far as she knows, these are like the only 5 people who remain. Like, why would you just villainously want them to die when you like depend upon them entirely for your survival?
Yeah. I mean, I agree that her betrayal of him there was probably one of the poorest written character turns.
And that's where we meet her. So like as soon as like you start off with this weird taste in your mouth where it's like, why is she just arbitrarily doing this? Like, I mean, what's wrong with her?
It makes a certain, I mean, I'm not going to defend the writing. I don't think it's very great, but she doesn't want to get rescued at this point. Right. So,
but that's so far beyond what like anyone would be thinking about right now, right? It's like, oh, I have my spaceship's destroyed. I'm just in the wilderness. I just need to survive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a lot to defend that part. I do think that her character from there expands out in a really lovely way. And I think she's ends up being a very complicated character who you realize like is continually looking out for herself and doing the wrong things to protect herself, but you kind of get her motivation behind it, and she turns out to be way more complicated than the show.
It's a hard thing to do. I mean, I definitely get the fact that like she doesn't know what's good for her.
Yeah.
But then it makes it really hard to buy her as like this manipulating villain. Like it seems more like a bumbling farce than like a true villain.
My problem with her at the first half of the season is that she just like she doesn't have clear focus yet. Like because like as soon as the planet is told to be destroyed, the focus of her goal is the only way I'm going to live is to get off this planet with everyone else, but have enough leverage to where they're not just going to throw me in prison. So her goal becomes, I need Will's robot to listen to me. I need to manipulate things to where I get Will's robot under my control, and then I'll have enough leverage and power to where people can't touch me. So that becomes her goal in the second half of the story. But in the first half, you're right. It's really just there's scene after scene of her just manipulating people, just like pushing people in different directions. And you're not clear what her long-term plan is other than just screw with people.
And one of the reasons that disappointed me is like clearly they like needed a Dr. Smith because this is a reboot and there was a Smith in the original. But like she wasn't necessary. Like there was a lot more they could have done with just the survival aspect. Could have been like, oh, we need a source of water. We need to build a camp, like, whatever. Like in terms of the actual Swiss Family Robinson, which was a pretty compelling, interesting story.
Yeah.
On its own. And they'd set that up perfectly, but they just kind of immediately like throw that away because that's not like what the original Lost in Space was like. It's like, oh, we need this cartoon villain. We haven't really decided exactly why she's going to be the antagonist yet, so stuff like that. Like I felt it was a big waste.
Well, see, I mean, I think that's where you and I differ, because I don't see this show as a survival show.
It clearly becomes not a survival show.
I mean, this show is a survival show in the way that Lost was a survival show. This is closer to Lost in space than it is to Swiss Family Robinson. It is very much a show that is about this family and the complications and complexities of the relationship, because as we learn more about these characters, we learn each one of them has issues with each other one of them that they're trying to work through, and a lot of their motivation for being part of this mission was because things are a mess, and they're like, okay, we can leave this planet, we can get a fresh new start, and maybe that'll fix a lot of our problems. And so the survival, the adventure, the problem solving that happens during the course of the show is really just a motivator for the inter-character conflict that happens as these people try to solve their problems with each other and their problems with themselves.
And that's what any show like this should be based on, like at its core, is like the characters. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they're trying to survive is just like an extreme scenario where certain aspects of their characters are like more free to come out.
Right.
But even that, I didn't really buy. Like a lot of the conflict that appears, and it starts to appear, I think, in episode 2, really, where they start having flashbacks about how like the dad was never home and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It feels like it's almost like the flashbacks that they have are used to communicate like not very deep things. The flashbacks seem like a bit of a waste, and then like when the arguments surface on the planet, it seems completely out of place. Like the mother and father are being really like kind of passive aggressive to each other starting in episode 2 when like they're still just trying to survive, and it feels really out of place because it's like that kind of scenario that would make you work together more, and everything else would kind of be under the surface. So
I don't know if that's true. I mean, I think people are weird. I don't think like, yeah, you might come together to solve the problem, but your underlying issues are still there. And I think it is in the slow moments that the issues come out. Like there's one moment when I think they're either driving in a car or trapped in the car or something that that Maureen makes the comment like, so if or when we get to Alpha Centauri, where are you going to live? Which is like her basically declaring that this marriage is so bad that it's basically over and they're basically separated.
Right. And I don't think the flashbacks explained that very well, because all you get from the flashbacks, and maybe they go deeper into it later, but the initial flashbacks are just like, well, the first one you see is the father like showing up on Christmas as a surprise, which is not bad at all. That's like, oh, what a great dad. And then there's other flashbacks where he's just not there for Christmas and he's just like working too hard. And I get how that would strain a relationship, but the relationship seems much more like bitter than just, you were working too much. I didn't really buy that this relationship was completely broken. Well, it didn't really make sense to me. There was no like incident that made that happen.
I don't think it's just that he's working too much. He was a Navy SEAL and he basically re-upped for another tour instead of dealing with his family. So he was basically running away from his problems. Like he didn't know how to deal with his wife. He was like unsure of like a lot of his arc in this whole story is like learning how to act around his children. He doesn't know it. He doesn't.
I don't feel like you saw that in the flashbacks. Like you see it told from the point where he's already gone. Like you don't see any scenes of him being with his family and maybe like feeling a little bit out of place. Like it needed something like that so you understood why he was running away from his family.
I'll say it right here. I don't think any of the flashbacks are necessary in the story, and I think you could cut them all out, and you would maybe have to add a couple present day scenes to plug in some of the missing pieces, but.
It would have been better. I mean, they could have used the flashbacks to great effect if it had some things like that where you got to understand them a little bit better. I just didn't feel like the flashbacks helped you understand the characters. They were more just to like communicate like simple things that you could have just communicated in the present.
Right.
Like, we'd like to establish that they're having a fight for some reason.
it feels like, and especially in the later seasons, later episodes, you would notice it. It feels like we're having the flashbacks because we're kind of doing a Lost thing, and they did flashbacks. But in Lost, the flashbacks were motivated. Each episode had there was structure to it. Each episode had 2 or 3 flashbacks, and they told a story of the character throughout them.
It was woven into some theme of the episode.
Right, exactly. In this, the flashbacks are really just, oh, we need to reveal some piece of information that they'll use. Like there's one in episode 9 that is like really just like, we start the episode with a flashback literally because we need someone to explain something that pays off later in the episode. And they don't do it in every episode. Every episode doesn't have flashbacks. It's just some of them. So they feel out of place and weird. And you're right, just like a writerly shortcut. It's like, oh, we gotta do something here. So let's just do it in a flashback. And I agree with it. I agree with you on that. I don't like them. And I hope this did get picked up for a second season. So I hope they just get rid of that entirely.
Oh, they definitely. Yeah, because they didn't have that much to say to begin with. So it'd be just like Lost, where the first like 2 seasons, the flashbacks were cool. But at some point it's like, oh my God, like we get it. We know who these characters
we've told everything we can about this character. What can we do with these?
Oh, now we're going to do future backs.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
I believe those called were flash forwards, Michael.
Flash forwards, yeah, whatever. But yeah, that was I found it harmful to, like, it would have been better if they'd just been passive aggressive to each other and they hadn't explained it or hadn't tried to explain it, because then you could just be like, interesting, I wonder where this is coming from. But the flashbacks like kind of promised to give you some context and didn't. It was just like, yep, remember how they were fighting? They were also fighting previously.
Yeah. I will agree with you on that.
So I didn't like that so much, but the characters, I did like the family. Like each character had a pretty good core to them. That was you kind of wanted to root for them, and they were relatable and interesting. I felt like they could have done a lot more with their relationships between the various characters.
Penny was the weakest. She was the most one note of all the characters.
I agree. And you could feel that from the first episode, because everyone else had like a specially trained purpose, and she just kind of felt like she was tagging along and would just kind of whine and be like, "Oh, why do I have to do the surgery?" Because
Judy has the eldest child syndrome, and she also has an even more complicated relationship with Will Robinson, because he is not her father. He was born by Maureen and another relationship before they got married. So there's that tension there. Will has all his tension with his lack of bravery and this whole subplot about the fact that he shouldn't even be there. The only reason he is there is because his mom cheated. He failed the tests. He doesn't belong here. So there's that stuff. And in the middle, you kind of just have Penny, who she's the teenager. She's kind of has like one-liners.
She kind of says snarky stuff.
Yeah. Right. It's just like, once again, it's like, teenage girl, what do we do with this? And they didn't really. I mean, she has kind of a interesting plot line with she kind of dates one of the other kids in their colony thing.
I don't know where that ended up, but it felt pretty forced at the beginning.
It wasn't great, and it was never great. But she does have a cool moment near the end where like he breaks up with her and then comes crawling back, and she does get her cool moment of like, no, screw you, I don't need to be with you. That was cool.
It felt kind of out of place, teen drama-y. It felt like it could have been fixed somehow, because everyone else like had their role both like in the family and in like training. Like the mom was the engineer, and the eldest daughter was a doctor, and so forth. The youngest son seemed to be just like, I don't know, mechanical in some way, but obviously he's like 11. So but like she just could have been given like some role. Like, yeah, you are this thing, and that role could have helped dictate like maybe some things about her character as well. But instead they just kind of decided not to.
Yeah, or just flat out didn't know what to do with her. She has a couple moments where she like comforts Will and is like the good older sister to Will when he needs it, but yeah, she has.
Judy could have been that.
Right.
Like, Judy kind of was that also.
Yeah.
So
I hope they find something to do with her. So I want to talk about Robot a little bit, because as much as he is the plot device that you liked the least, I think I love that they tried to make a character out of this thing. In the 90s movie and in the episodes of the show, I saw the robot was just purely a gimmick, and they kind of really use the robot to explore Will himself, but he also gets his own little arc. He is a complicated character who's like, you don't know where his allegiance lies. You learn very early in the show that it was the robot that caused their ships to crash. Like it attacked them and blew them up, and you learn why by the end of the series. I won't spoil that part, but Will repairs him, so he's taken to Will in some kind of way, and they kind of explore. It's kind of like the Terminator 2 robot little boy relationship thing, and then they explore that, and I thought that was a good addition to this story that I hadn't seen Lost in Space do before.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see the end of this, so I'm missing all the explanations of the robot, but I was annoyed with it. Like, so the first episode, it works that Will's the one who finds him and comes back and like kind of surprisingly saves the day because people didn't have a lot of expectations for him. Mm-hmm. And it's like, gosh, I hope he at least just survives. But instead he manages to come all the way back with the robot and like save his sister. And that's fine. But what kind of happens after that is instead of Will like earning like some like continuing to like be braver on his own, like the robot kind of like supplants that by, well, of course he's braver because now he's not doing anything. He's just telling the robot to do things. And the robot, like apparently at least at the beginning, does everything Will says and just what Will says. So it some of the mystery is lost. Like, yeah, you do learn it was responsible for destroying the ship, but it is a robot, and it does appear to be now, like without exception, just doing whatever Will tells it to do, or whatever Will wants, rather, because they do make the point that what Will wants and what he tells the robot is different, because the robot like protects him in a room,
right.
When the robot was, but like whatever Will wants, it will do now, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. So those are the rules of the robot. So it almost like I didn't really care that it destroyed the ship because I maybe was listening to someone else, like. But by the rules that they establish when it appears, it just does whatever Will wants it to.
Yeah. I think both of those things pay off in interesting ways by the end. I think Will gets his moments of bravery that are completely independent from the robot. I think the show, I don't know if you got to the point where he has it walk off the cliff. Had you gotten to that episode yet?
I think I got to a point where he told it to and then stopped it.
Yeah, well, so later in the season, he basically tells it to walk off a cliff because of Dr. Smith's tinkering, someone tries to shoot the robot, and the robot responds by trying to kill that person, and in the process, John Robinson gets hurt, and so basically nobody trusts the robot anymore, so Will has it walk off the cliff. And so the later half of the show has him, now he had this thing that made him more brave, and now he's without that thing, and it's him kind of dealing with that and finding his bravery independent of the robot. And I think those pay off in pretty fulfilling ways.
Yeah. So, but you could also say like, well, the show was made better when they realized that the robot was getting in the way of character development and temporarily killed it off.
Well, I mean, everyone needs, instigating call to action moments to begin their arc, and I think the Will's relationship with the robot is exactly that for him. So I agree that keeping the robot with him the entire time would have probably been a bad call, and they realized that, but I think it's okay that he was around.
I think they could have just simplified it and gotten rid of him earlier, or like limited him in some way. It just made that the first episodes that you also said was a slog, like a total slog. Like it didn't really feel like anyone was progressing.
I mean, I completely agree that the problem with the first episodes is they're kind of spinning their wheels for a while, and it's like there's a lot of stuff in between. We landed on this planet and we've started a colony of people, and now together, all the 70 people that remain or something, let's solve this problem.
Yeah, I mean, and the show just kind of like tonally shifts around a lot in the first few episodes, or thematically shifts, or you're not clear what the conflict is going to be, because like I really think the first episode, it's like very clear that the conflict is like survival, and it's like, how will this scrappy family pull together and survive by relying on each other? And then they shift, because then like they discover there's actually a whole bunch of more people there, and so okay, well, survival doesn't seem to be hard anymore. But that kind of makes like the kid characters who you originally thought like, oh, they're going to have to grow up fast, because now everyone's like depending on each other to survive. Like, you know, the daughter had to perform the surgery and stuff. It's like now they appear to just be children again. It's like the parents kind of ignore them. And
I don't agree with that.
They kind of go off on their stupid little kid adventures. Like when it's like, well, dad's going to be upset about the robot, so we should hide him in a cave for a few days. And it's like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And stuff like that. And so I felt like they kind of undermined themselves by like switching gears, and I just never really was re-engaged in the series.
I mean, they are still children. I mean, like, I think there are still survival elements to the story. There's problem-solving elements. A lot of the plot elements of this whole show are, we got to get off this planet. Let's find a way. Let's put our brains together and find a way to get off this planet. And I think in that, each and every one of the Robinsons plays a role. Even Penny has her role by the end of it. And I do think there's still a feeling of, Will, you've got to grow up fast, while also scenes when they're just kids. And I mean, Will gets manipulated a lot by Dr. Smith, because Will is a child and Dr. Smith is very good at manipulation.
Right, but it didn't feel right. Like the same thing happened to Swiss Family Robinson, actually. Like the kids, the three boys, like have to learn to be responsible very quickly. But yeah, they're still children, so they still have like their moments of wanting to just play instead, or like cry or whatever. But like the ultimate, this is all part of their growth toward being like more responsible adults. Whereas here, it just seems like they've been relegated to like tools of, oh, he's just a stupid kid and no one expects anything from him. He's not even necessary. It's like they are unnecessary. Like in terms of the survival now, it's like, oh, us adults are going to go do this thing, and maybe we'll give you kids some like side plots. But it's not like we're really relying on you, Will, to do this thing for us. It's no one needs him for anything anymore.
Without spoiling the entire show, I can say that that's not true.
Well, it's true in the first few episodes, where you're still establishing, like, you're still trying to figure out what the show's trying to do.
Well, but, I mean,
yeah,
I mean, I guess it's true that once the initial crisis is over, like the kids' role in solving the next crisis is taken back a little bit, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, or I don't see why that's in and of itself bad.
Yeah, well, yeah, I just couldn't get over it.
That's fine. This is not like I am being the one that's more defending the show, just because out of the two I liked it better. It's not nearly one of my favorite shows of the year. I thought it was just very functionally good. It was not like it's not like the best piece of science fiction I've ever seen. It's not even the best thing I've seen on Netflix in the past week. It was just good. It's good.
Yeah, my summary is I was frustrated with it because I felt it had a lot of potential, and I felt it undermined itself until I didn't care about what was happening anymore.
That's fair. All right, that's Lost in Space. Season 2 coming a year from now. I don't know how long it's going to take, but season 2 is coming. And they left the first season on a pretty interesting note that I think I'm going to be very curious to see where it goes from here. I'll say that.
Cool.
All right, now it's time to talk about what we have been watching or doing or playing.
What have you been watching? What have I been watching? Well, I asked you first, so you better tell me.
Michael,
Yes.
why don't you go first? Your first thing, this is something we thought about doing a whole episode about, but I didn't know if it would work for a whole episode, so we'll just have a quick conversation about it.
Yeah, well, I was watching the Bates Motel, which I think I missed the boat on. Like, it's fairly old at this point.
Yeah.
There were it's over. There were 5 seasons. I think it ended like last year, the year before or something. But anyway, I just started watching it from the first season.
This
and
is
while
the
I was
prequel to Psycho, I guess,
yes,
kind of, sort of.
The premise is it's the prequel to Psycho. It's about Norman Bates and his mother mostly. And it starts off where they've just bought the Bates Motel in this new town. And I texted Scott in the middle of the first season, and I was like, "This show is like fucking brilliant."
Yeah, you were like, I had never heard you be as positive about something as you were this show.
Yeah, well, and after watching many seasons of it, I didn't finish. I watched the first 4 seasons. I didn't watch the last one. Because I'd lost interest by that point. But I would say the first season is really brilliant, and like they kind of run out of important stuff to do for a while.
So I've seen probably not the entire first season. I've probably, on retrospect, only seen probably 4 or 5 episodes. So Michael, why did the show like knock you off your feet?
Well, yeah, here's why it's brilliant. So, first of all, it's a really hard thing to pull off, because a story about the background of Norman Bates doesn't immediately seem interesting. Like, Norman Bates isn't really a likable character. He's a crazy person who like dresses as his mother, and in a way that you might say like, well, it's really easy to make a serial killer sympathetic because, you know, Dexter exists. But Dexter is a completely different show, because Dexter is kind of like a hero in a way. It's like, well, he's only killing bad people. And it's a lot easier to root for him than it is for Norman Bates. But the character of Norman Bates and the character of his mother, who was dead by the time Psycho movie starts, although you don't know that, is just really brilliant and believable. Like, they have this really pathological relationship where they're very possessive of each other. You totally buy Norman's kind of like weird, like polite detachment, because of his upbringing, and you're really interested to see how he interacts with people. And it sort of has the structure of like a teen like CW show, which is cringeworthy, but with the perturbation that it's not following a typical high school student, but Norman Bates, and it's really well done. Every character's action in the first season makes sense. It's not like forced. I'm not telling you about things because we need some sort of conflict in this episode, so I'm just going to withhold information from you. I have no reason for withholding, or this person just happens to be evil for some reason, or I caught you doing this thing, so I'm going to hit you over the back of the head and knock you out. To just, you know, all those tropes that you always see in these type of shows. Like, it doesn't do. Everyone behaves exactly how they would behave. And I just really liked it. I thought it was really interesting. The characters like are objectively not good people, but they're still like really understandable. And I felt like I was learning about a certain type of damaged person while I was watching it.
Cool. I think you have convinced me, so I'm gonna spend some time on this show, because that sounds. I mean, I was never really as pulled into it as you seem to be, but I've watched worse things for longer, so I will push forward with it.
Yeah, well, I think I think you'll be able to know after the first few episodes if you just start from episode 1. I don't know if you started from episode 1 the first time.
Yeah, I think I did. Because I know my wife has seen the entire first season, so like
Gotcha.
I started watching it because she's like, "Oh, I think this show's good. Start watching it," and I started watching like the first few, and then just lost it.
You have to be paying attention to, like, to be interested in it. I think it's not the kind of thing that you would just put on while you were doing something else.
Yeah, it's not one of those fall asleep shows,
right? And it can be very difficult to watch because, just like the relationship Norman has with his mom is so kind of like disturbing that it's not always like fun, but it is really good.
Cool. All right, that is Bates Motel, which I think every episode is on Netflix, right?
Yes, every episode is on Netflix. I would just watch season 1. I guess if you're really into it, you might as well keep going. But I think it kind of loses a lot of the things that made it interesting to begin with.
Do you think you'll ever finish it?
Probably not. I know I read the Wikipedia summary of season 5. Because if I get tired of a show, sometimes I'll just read the summary of the rest of it. And
Gotcha.
Season 5 is basically taking place at the same time as the Psycho movie. So for that reason, it might be kind of interesting, but I felt like I'd already gotten everything that the show is exploring. I felt I'd already learned.
I guess that means Norma Bates is kind of out of it.
Spoiler alert, yes.
I don't think it counts as a spoiler.
Well, if you haven't seen Psycho.
Yeah, but you can't be mad about a spoiler from a movie that came out 50 years ago, 60 years ago.
Right. They set that up though. They set up the whole like mother being
dead. You could say dead. You could say dead.
Well, like taxidermied, basically.
Oh, yeah,
like the body is still there and he's talking to it and stuff.
All right. What else you got, Michael?
I've also watched, I believe, Denmarkian dystopian future series, The Rain.
You were like, I have not. You were like the poster child for Netflix's recommends algorithm because if they do it, you will watch it. Yeah.
Well, if they do it, and it's like a genre that I like, and the Netflix is pretty good at, it's definitely not perfect, but it's pretty good at understanding what I like because unlike a lot of people, because I talked to other people about this and they're like, yeah, Netflix recommending algorithm sucks. I stop watching shows and movies in the middle of them if I don't like them. And Netflix knows that and uses that to adjust their algorithm. Whereas I think most of the friends I've talked to who have said that the algorithm doesn't work for them will just watch the whole movie anyway because they feel like they've started something.
Yeah,
and then the algorithm learns nothing. But I will stop a movie 20 minutes in, which I've done a lot. Like it recommended The Outsider with Jared Leto to me, and I stopped watching after like 20 minutes. It recommended the Châtelet, whatever, the French movie that you said that you were watching to me, but I stopped watching that in the middle of the first episode. Anyway, it recommended The Rain to me, and because it knows I like to watch dystopian future things. and this is a Denmark show. By default, it gives you the dubbed version, which is really annoying, but you can go in and turn it to the original Denmark audio with subtitles, which makes it a lot better. But it's about this future where like there's some virus that is in the rain, which kind of makes it sound stupid, like The Happening, but it's a good like perturbation on the world because like if you touch water, you're going to get this like horrible vomit dying sickness. And the main characters are like the children of the scientist who had something to do with this whole thing happening and put them in a bunker. And then he left to go try to fix stuff. And then they're in the bunker for like 6 years straight. And then they eventually emerge and they have to like make their way in this world. And it was a really interesting premise, and I like things with interesting premises. The characters are pretty good, but I think ultimately, like as they like explore like the reasons for things, it's a little bit of a letdown, and it ends up being just okay. But if you like characters and dystopian worlds, you might enjoy it.
Interesting. Did you watch the German Netflix show? I can't remember the name of it now. Crap. I should have known this before I said it. There was one that came out that was being compared to Stranger Things.
Yeah, The Dark or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
I did not watch that one. No. I don't really like Stranger Things as much as most.
Gotcha. I was wondering if that's why this was recommended, because you watched that.
I think it's because, remember a long time ago when I watched all those Korean movies with trains in them?
Yes, I do.
It like saw I was interested in watching foreign movies, so it basically just gave me a bunch of foreign things. And then cross-referenced them with like dystopian movies.
Yeah, I mean, they say that the Netflix algorithm is like the most successful thing ever, because like apparently 80% of what people watch on Netflix is watched based on their recommendation, which is an insane number. It's insane.
I kind of don't buy that, because people will just turn on Netflix and like, even if they don't like it, they'll just like keep it on.
Right.
So I don't know how to judge the Netflix algorithm, except for people like me who actually turn off stuff that they don't like watching. But
well, I mean, it worked, Michael.
Well, it kind of worked. Yeah, it kind of works. I mean, it still gives me duds, but
like, as far as they're concerned, you stay subscribed. As far as the people that license the stuff to Netflix is concerned, the minute you click on it, you've paid for it. So
that's true.
Everyone wins.
It's true.
All right. You got anything else?
I do. I've also been playing a video game, Persona 5, which is another thing I tend not to notice things right when they come out. I think this game is 2 years old now, but it's pretty brilliant, actually. I've been searching for... I haven't played any of the previous Persona games, although they've been recommended to me from time to time. But I really love like story-based RPGs, like generally Western ones. Like Dragon Age is one of my favorite games of all time. Mass Effect is pretty good. Stuff like that. I really like the Life is Strange games that have come out recently. Anyway, I like immersive story games. And in a lot of ways, Persona 5 is really good at that. It's instead of putting you like in real life in some other world, it's more like putting you in the middle of an anime. So it's not like hyper realistic in that sense, but you get to kind of live your life as this high school student in Japan, and you like go to class and like meet up with your friends and stuff, but you're also this person who can go into this like realm of collective consciousness and battle like the negative side of people and steal their heart and change the way they behave in real life. And it's very artistic in the sense that like you come up against all of these, like you have this abusive gym teacher at your school, and his like basically unconscious world dungeon that you have to fight through is all symbolic of his attitude of being like the king of his like sports castle, and everything in the castle kind of represents something about his pathology, and it's well done. It's super stylish game. It's very immersive in the sense that like days kind of pass in like a real calendar order, and you feel like you're kind of in this world. And it's like massively long. I don't know how long I've been playing it, but apparently there's like 80 plus hours of like actual gameplay, not like side randomly generated dungeon crap. So I think it's pretty good value. But so, you said you'd played Persona before.
Yeah, you've never played any of the games before, right? This is your first.
I played one on like the Game Boy Advance.
Okay.
A long time, which I don't think is like canon main series.
Gotcha.
But.
Yeah. The only one of these I've played is Persona 4. I got the gold edition of Persona 4 when that came out for my PSP back in the day. And I think your description of it feels like you're in an anime is exactly why I did not like this game very much.
Yeah.
It just did nothing for me. I think the combat was cool. I liked a lot of the battle system in 4 is cards, I think. And I think that they do different battle systems each one, but and that was cool, but I never really got into the story. It just did nothing for me. But I say that knowing that this is not like my kind of thing at all. So
yeah, I wouldn't recommend this to you because I know you have this hatred for animes that is completely unwarranted.
Okay.
The whole world agrees with me.
I mean, a lot of the people that listen to us do. That's for sure. All right, so that's Persona 5 out now. What are you playing it on, PC?
No, I think it's only on PlayStation. I'm playing it on
you're right.
PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
I've been looking for, and the reason I've been looking for like another immersive RPG, and I've been downloading all these ones and just been like super disappointed with each one. And this one I finally found that I have gotten into. So
Sweet.
I'm happy with that. But
all right, it's my turn.
If you have any recommendations for good immersive RPGs, if anyone's listening to this,
yeah, send them in. I'll make sure they get to Michael.
Leave it in the YouTube comments.
Oh yeah, you check those.
That's the only thing I check.
Not everyone listens on YouTube, Michael.
I know, but I don't have accounts with anything, so that's where I listen.
All right. Well, I've watched the first 3 episodes of the new season of 13 Reasons Why, which is what came out this past weekend. Did you see the first season of that, Michael?
No, I didn't. And I didn't like the premise of the first one. And now that the second one's come out, which I recently heard about, like it just seems like ridiculous that there would be a sequel.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, and I also left all of these other things.
Well, that's not quite the premise. So the first season is a teenage girl commits suicide and leaves 13 tapes for all the people that she feels responsible for it. So each episode is a new tape. The second season is there is a lawsuit going on where the parents of the girl are suing the school for their failures in relation to her suicide. So each episode, the structure of the second season, each episode is a new person of the original cast testifying before the court and unveiling new secrets that we didn't know about. I watched this because I watched the first season and I left the first season saying, that was a pretty good 13 episodes of TV. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought about the implications of doing what they did, which is basically what they did is they told teenage girls or teenagers in general, hey, if you think no one can hear you, no one understands you, kill yourself and then leave them tapes and then everyone will listen to you and everyone will finally understand your pain. And I was like, that is so recklessly irresponsible that I know for a fact studies showed that suicide rates went up in the wake of this show. So the more I thought about the show, even though I thought it was well made and well done, the more I was upset with what they were doing. So I watched the first few episodes to kind of see, are they going to comment on that? Are they going to comment on that critique? And the show opens with basically like a minute long thing about telling kids like, if you're a kid that's suffering, they list like a bunch of the topics that are covered in the show, like depression, bullying, suicide, drugs, like all these different things. And they say, if you are suffering from any of these, like maybe you don't want to watch the show, or maybe you want to pull your parents in and watch and have watch this with your parents so they can talk through some of this stuff with you afterwards, which I think was a very responsible thing to do.
It feels a bit just like they're covering themselves. Like,
yeah.
Because the thing that has emotional weight to it is not the public service announcement at the beginning, but like the content of the show, right?
Right. And I'm deathly afraid that this season is going to end on a school shooting. And if they do that, then I will be furious with them, because I and the reason I think that is because they were supposed to have like a big premiere event for the show on Friday, but they canceled it after the Houston shooting. So I'm like, why would they do that unless they were dealing with school shooting in the show? And I'm going to be so mad if they do that. Then that's kind of, I guess you could say I'm hate watching it. I don't like that term, but it's curious watching, I guess.
I get that.
I definitely was pulled into the first season because I think the structure of the story and like the way they said, oh, you're going to learn all this information, it kind of pulls you in and you want to say, oh, I got to find out who's on the next tape. What is the next tape going to reveal?
Right.
I have not felt that in this season.
Yeah, mysteries are very compelling, but the reason I haven't watched it is it just seems like sad porn. I don't like the message that it's implying, just like you said. Yeah. And I just don't like I don't like watching things designed to like emotionally manipulate me so transparently.
Yeah, I understand that. So the other thing I watched that was also on Netflix was Evil Genius, which is a new 4-part true crime series, similar to their, I forgot what the name of it, Making a Murderer, and kind of jumping off the true crime train. This is about a 2011 thing that happened in Erie, Michigan, where a man with a bomb strapped around his neck robbed a bank, and then the bomb exploded outside. And it's kind of this ridiculous tale of the people behind that whole thing. Like, the guy claimed that someone strapped this on him and told him he had to go rob the bank. They found a bunch of like super detailed notes to the guy, where it was almost like a Saw game where they like, go to this place and get this key, and once you get all 4 keys you can unlock the bomb, and if you do it in less than 50 minutes with the money that you stole from the bank, you will live. So it's this crazy crime that I can't believe actually happened, and they go into that in this 4-part documentary series. Unfortunately, the premise is way more interesting than the actual documentary they put together. It's really uneven. It's really weird. It feels it's about 4 hours, and it feels about 3 hours too long. It feels like they could have just told this whole story in one episode or a feature length film or something. And it's kind of it's all over the place. There's a narrator that you don't find out who the guy speaking is until the 3rd episode, and it's just, I think, a cool concept, a very interesting crime, but the documentary itself was just not well executed at all. So I probably wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I'm kind of skeptical of some of these true crime shows, because anything that's like, it's like meant to be entertaining, and it's meant to have a message, like more than just like portraying facts, and I don't trust it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The best true crime thing I've seen ever is American Vandal, which was the parody of true crime that came out on Netflix last year. That I would recommend. It is a hilarious parody that actually like gets into some pretty interesting conversations about school and kids' roles in school. I've talked about it on the podcast before, but it's really good.
It sounds interesting.
Yeah,
give that a try. See if Netflix recommends it to me.
All right, and lastly, Michael, I saw Deadpool 2 this weekend. It came out on Friday, and I went and saw it Saturday morning. And I think your enjoyment of this movie is going to be largely based on what you thought of the first one. If you liked the first one, I think you'll like this movie. That's kind of how I felt. I did not fall in love with the first one. I didn't think, oh my god, greatest comic book movie ever. But I enjoyed it for what it was. I was really worried about the second one because I really thought the whole Deadpool thing was a shtick that could get old and boring very fast, but I was pretty impressed with what they did with this movie. The first act is pretty slow as it's kind of setting things up, but once you move into the second act and Deadpool like assembles his team, his X-Force team that they showed off in the trailers, the movie really picks up, and that carries through to the very end. It's really funny. It's surprisingly, once again, they did a ridiculous like fourth wall breaking genre meta genre analysis film that also like underneath it has sneakily like a really personal, powerful message for the character and has a lot of heart. I don't know how they're managing to keep this tone between those two things, but they do it. It's a really good movie. I was very surprised. I liked it a lot.
I believe you.
I know you. I know you're not going to see it. I know.
I'm on a boycott.
I am convinced now, though, that based on the weakest part of the movie being when Deadpool is by himself, they can't keep doing Deadpool movies. I think they need. I know they're making an X-Force movie. I think they need to make Deadpool an ensemble franchise. Like, I don't think he by himself can hold up a film anymore. That shtick is old. He needs supporting characters to do it. So I hope they realize that as well.
They need to have some depth to it at some point.
Yeah.
And if he's so like irreverent, then you can't really explore him too deeply because he's too aware.
Right. Well, the thing about irreverence is you need straight characters to play off of it, and
exactly, yeah.
And they used Colossus in the first one, and they bring Colossus back here, but Josh Brolin as Cable is really good here as well. Josh Brolin's having a really good year. He's got Avengers and now this, and Sicario 2 is coming out.
Oh, God.
Good for you, Josh Brolin. All right. That's it for me, and that's all we had for you guys this week. If you have any questions or comments or just want to let us know about your opinions on Lost in Space or any of the other things we talked about this week, you can reach out to us via email at dailyplanetfilms@gmail.com or on Twitter at Daily Planet Films. We do try to respond to you guys when you send us messages. And remember, Michael needs RPG recommendations, so send those in too.
Yes, story-focused RPGs.
Yeah, and if you don't listen on YouTube, shoot us an email with them, and I'll make sure they get to Michael.
If you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure that you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
Absolutely, we've got all kinds of great content here and at dailyplanetfilms.com. So check out all the shows we do there. And Michael and I are about to have to get off this call and turn around and do another one because we've got another episode of our Weaver Dice campaign coming up next week. That's something we're very excited about.
Yes.
Your character
too.
is the best.
Oh, thank you. I like your character too.
Oh, thanks. So yeah,
let's be in-game friends.
Oh, we will, I think. We will.
We will.
Billy's definitely not going to be friends with that other loser because that guy.
That nerd.
Yeah. And if you like what we do here and want to support this show and all the shows we do, you can head on over to patreon.com/dailyplanetfilms and become a patron of the Daily Planet. You can pledge $1 a month or whatever else you can afford to help ensure we keep getting to make new stuff, keep growing. We have all kinds of new ideas and new plans like the We've Got Weaver Dice campaign that we just started. It's a great time for the Daily Planet, and thank you guys for being a part of it.
Also, please consider rating and reviewing us on iTunes. Every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content we make here.
Yeah, I'm laughing, and Michael's laughing because I just highlighted the line that he was supposed to say.
I totally zoned out while you were going on and on all about those
sorry.
Patreons and whatever the hell else. I don't know what it is.
All right, guys, that's all for us this week. Next week, we will be right back here to talk about the newest Star Wars film, Solo. And I'm sure Michael will be on that one because he's definitely seeing it, right?
No, I've officially started my boycott of Star Wars movies, so I will not be seeing this one.
The Michael boycott. It's the best. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
Podcast is over. It's done. We hope you all had some fun. Go back to your work or your school. Maybe the gym. Hey, that's cool. Regardless, just go away. But please come back next Friday.